Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder and doctor of physical therapy. Today's guest is Dr. Jeff Hart. Jeff, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. Appreciate having me on.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited to chop it up with you, man. Obviously, you're a man of many things. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting into the weeds with your profession and bodybuilding. But before we get there, Jeff, let us know, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
There's a lot of them, but I think one of the guys that really stands out to me would be Lee Labrada. Kind of being one of the smaller guys. He hung with some of the best out there, Lee Haney and Dorian, and all those guys. So I've loved Lee. I was fortunate enough to actually go out to Texas last year and meet Lee and do some work with Hunter out there, and my buddy Ryan Brown, who does a lot of his body work and stuff like that. So I got to go out there and meet Lee, and he's such an awesome dude. So kind of like someone I've been a fan of my entire life, and I got to go meet him in person, and he turned out to be such an awesome dude. So he's definitely one of them. And I mean, Dorian and his work ethic and just how he's always trained has been awesome. One of the things that was really cool, one of the first shows I ever did in bodybuilding when I was, I think, 18, Ronnie Coleman was the guest poser. So that was pretty crazy to see that. So yeah, a lot of those guys. But Lee's at the top of the list for sure.
Cool. Are there any current guys in the IFBB that you admire or kind of look up to?
I'm kind of biased because I work with a lot of the guys here in Florida. Like Chris Bumstead, Brett Wilkin. I was fortunate enough to work with Nick Walker for a while. Justin Jacoby, who you just had on, he's a great guy. I look up to him a lot. He's super knowledgeable. Those are a lot of the guys I really love to watch. But I think Hadi Chupin is one of the guys. His conditioning is just unparalleled. So a lot of those guys. Chris is. I'm a big fan of Chris's. Have been for a while. But Justin's another great guy who I think I really look up to, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. In the pros here.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would second that. Justin is somebody. Obviously, he's young. He's a pro bodybuilder, but just having him on for this, I think it was the third time here earlier in the week or last week. Just his insight and his knowledge for how young he is. Like, I could literally just sit and listen to him and just glean, because it's like, man, he's so young. Again, he's a pro bodybuilder, but you can tell that he is somebody that is willing to listen and learn himself. And then he's able to very well, he's able to, kind of pass on that knowledge and that information, which a lot of people maybe can listen and learn, but not everybody can has that talent to kind of, break down that information and share others. And he's definitely a star on the rise when it comes to coach, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the pro league as well.
Yeah. So it's fun. I get to pick his brain, every week when I work with him. And so, I have some buddies that are his clients and things like that too. So it's fun to kind of catch up with how they're doing and just hearing like how he changes things and manipulates things. And the guys are so knowledgeable. So I think it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Very cool. And we'll get into a little bit more of that, because I think obviously you've got some insights into some of the best bodybuilders in the world that most people don't, even a different perspective than maybe like their coach, because you're actually working on their physiques in terms of body work. So we'll get there. I think that's really cool. But what age, Jeff, did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
I think I was about 12 years old, 12 or 13. So I actually used to be the short, fat kid growing up. So I have some older siblings, and they kind of made fun of me a lot as a kid. I was kind of picked on at school because I was like the short, fat kid. I just didn't like grow yet. But my parents didn't have like the background of the gym stuff. And so when I was like 12, 13, I just kind of picked the guys' brains at the gym. I grew up in a pretty friendly area in the Midwest in Perrysburg, Ohio. And people there were just pretty awesome. And I just asked the guys in the gym, like, hey, like, how do I look like you? And a lot of them were really receptive, and they kind of helped me. And, my dad would go to the gym and do his cardio and do his little like circuit, with the machines. And I played basketball with my brother, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I just kind of got, between learning from these guys at the gym and, finding things online. That's kind of how I got into it.
Cool. Okay. Now you just mentioned you grew up in Ohio. So just talk to us a little bit more. Maybe I would like you to expound, if you're cool with it, expound a little bit more in terms of what you said, being kind of the short, fat kid, because obviously you said, you got picked on a little bit, and that on some level that had to have, shaped who you are today, and probably really motivated you to kind of get into lifting and bodybuilding and all that. So talk a little bit about that, but also I want you to talk a little bit about maybe the influence of your parents, any sports that you play. Just paint that picture a little bit for us, Jeff, up to about high school. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so, getting picked on a lot, like just being the short, fat kid, like, you can only handle so much of it, and you can either, choose to do something about it or just accept it. There's no point of bitching about it and not doing anything about it. And so when I was, young, I was just like, you know what, like, fuck this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make it happen. I got to figure this out. And I just hated being like, the unfit fat kid. And I just hated it. So pretty much, throughout junior high and high school, I just really read as much as I could. I talked to a lot of people, and I just kind of like learned along the way. I'm really fortunate that my dad, both of my parents are really supportive of what I was doing. My dad's gone to, almost every single competition I've ever done in any sport that I've done. And so he's always been supportive and kind of like happy that I'm pursuing health and wellness and being in the gym and doing something active. Played football in high school, power lifted a little bit. Wasn't that great, played a little strong safety, a little defense. Couldn't catch for shit. So wasn't that good, but I played. I lettered every year in football and loved it. But I knew like the gym stuff was for me, so I just loved like being in the gym, lifting weights, and I love that kind of grind. It's how I felt. And so it's kind of how I really pursued it. And, being picked on for so long, you kind of just, you don't want it to happen. And, once I was able to get a little stronger, people think my body changed a lot, going from 12 or 13 to high school, it stopped happening. People admired me, and, I got a lot of attention from the girls. And so obviously that all changed. So that's kind of what really kind of led me in that direction too.
Now, the community or the town that you grew up in Ohio, was it a bigger town or a smaller town?
Wasn't that big. I grew up in a city called Perrysburg. And so it's a suburb of Toledo. So like Toledo, Bowling Green, kind of all right around that area. So Northwest Ohio. So it wasn't huge. I mean, you knew a lot of the people there. I mean, my high school probably had 400 or 450 per grade. So it wasn't like a small area. It was pretty decent sized high school, but yeah, everyone there was pretty great though. I mean, pretty friendly area. It wasn't too big though.
Okay. So football, did that kind of become an outlet for you? And did you kind of gain a lot of, camaraderie and kind of like recognition through being a football player? And did that kind of tie into you, in the weight room and kind of really build that confidence? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So I remember when I was going to be in high school, when I was going to be a freshman, I remember in 8th grade going into the weight room and seeing all the football players and how much they were squatting and deadlifting. And I was like, holy shit. Like at this time, I was like 13, I couldn't even squat like 135. And I see these guys over here repping 4 or 5 plates, like ass to grass. And I'm like, whoa. So, seeing that, I'm like, I want to do that someday. And so, seeing that, like seeing their drive and getting, the motivation from those guys, that's something that really kind of pushed me in that direction. And then I kind of fell in love with, and, we had some great coaches. I was really close with some of my coaches in football, and, there were some of the professors in school and teachers in school. And so they, really kind of pushed me in that direction too. So that's kind of what really took off for me.
Yeah. Do you remember like specifically maybe something that one of those coaches kind of told you, or something that they kind of instilled in you that kind of still, has an impact in your life as an adult?
Maybe not in football as much. My first bodybuilding coach, he definitely had a lot of good knowledge for me, because I wasn't like the most talented kid on the football team, of course. So, I mean, they all, in high school, they were really supportive, and they loved my work ethic and drive, and how I was such a good team player, because I was able to push everybody else. I was able to, and I actually knew quite a bit, back in high school about the weight room and the gym. And so I was able to help a lot of the guys. And so, that's kind of something, that I took pride in, was making sure everybody was on point, taking care of their bodies too, for the most part, and like making sure they're doing the right stuff in the gym.
Cool. All right. So, obviously you went to college. So talk about, when you were in high school, what were you thinking about doing with your life? And then once you graduated, talk about your undergraduate degree, and then just kind of continue to talk about, your education up to the point, obviously, doctor of physical therapy. So you spent quite a bit of time in school, but talk about that evolution of education for us, Jeff, please.
Yeah. So in high school, just being so involved in the gym and loving fitness in the gym and in sports, I love football. Still to this day, I love it. I thought I wanted to be like an athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach. But then, as a kind of like towards the end of high school, I was like, even into college, I was like, well, maybe I'll go like the med school route, or maybe I'll go physical therapy route. So like, I was really lucky too. I had a lot of credits that I transferred in from high school into college. And so Miami University of Ohio, not a huge undergrad school, about like 14,000 undergrad. So big enough, but not too big. And I was able to take a lot of the like junior and senior level courses kind of earlier in the program. And so I was really fortunate enough. One of my professors named Dr. Jeffrey Pottiger, he's now the Dean of Students at Grand Valley State. He kind of got me into doing research with him. He knew I was a good student. He knew I worked hard, and he kind of got me into the direction of doing research, which I loved. And then some of my professors too were big into like the bodybuilding, just being in the exercise physiology world. And so they kind of drove me into like the fitness world too a little more. So I was really fortunate enough to be able to do that and kind of learn a lot from those guys. And that kind of was what kind of led me to do physical therapy kind of over med school, things like that.
Okay. So what did you actually study for your undergraduate? Was it kinesiology or exercise science or what?
Yeah. So it was undergrad was in exercise science. I minored in psychology and neuroscience.
Okay. Okay. So the research side of things, I want to touch on that for a minute, because that's, I don't know, not for everybody, right? I don't think it definitely wouldn't be for me, but okay. So what do you remember any of the research that you actually kind of worked on during your undergraduate, and what was kind of the appeal to you in terms of doing research? Because again, like I have a degree in exercise science, and research was nothing that I don't think I was ever too fond of or interested in. So talk about that for a minute, please.
Yeah. Well, so luckily enough, like I hate math, and I didn't have to do any of the statistical analyses that like my professors did all those. All I did was kind of collect data. And so what was neat being in that department, I was able to do testing for like different types of VO2 max testing, altitude testing. We did a lot of we worked with the hockey team there, and they're excellent in hockey every year. And so we did like the Wingate tests and all that stuff. So we were able to do a lot of the research with power output and like, different things with that. We did different testing on substrate oxidation. So how your body metabolizes, carbs, proteins, or fats, depending on the type of exercise you're doing. And then one of the big studies we did was on metabolic syndrome. And we kind of looked at that with high school and college and NFL players too. Cool. So I was lucky enough to present that research in Chicago at the one of the ACSM conferences, and then also the national conference in Baltimore. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that is really cool, especially during undergraduate studies.
Yeah. As long as I was doing the math, I was good.
What's that? I'm sorry. What's that?
As long as I wasn't doing the math, I was good.
You and me both. I think that's probably why a lot of people do exercise science degrees, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Now, okay, so you decide at some point in your undergraduate studies, you decide to go, pursue being a physical therapist. So, talk about like kind of like the big maybe moment when you realize like, hey, this is what I'm going to pursue, and then this is a type of education that I know nothing about. So I know for me, just getting a bachelor's degree was kind of it was a long 4 years. I'll just leave it at that. But I have so much respect for people that go on, get their master's and doctorate, because I know, it's just a whole nother level of education, right? So when did you realize you wanted to pursue physical therapy? And just talk about was there maybe an adjustment period from undergraduate to graduate, and just walk us through getting that doctorate of physical therapy degree. Yeah.
So, I did a lot of work with like one of the PT offices, like kind of in Oxford, Ohio, like where Miami University is located. And I really like just the ability to interact with people. As a physician, physicians get to spend, 5 minutes with their patient, and I didn't really like that. And plus I don't want to be in school till I'm like 36, 37. So I just loved like being able to work with people, kind of develop that relationship and really get people like feeling better. I don't want to, pump a bunch of meds into people and things like that. if I did go into medicine, it would have been like the orthopedic surgeon route. But I just love being able to interact with people, help them get better. And so, even as a PT, I can transition even into the strength and conditioning aspect too. So I have my CSCS, and so I can also kind of transition that. So as a PT, you can still do a lot more than you would be just being a physician. So it's kind of what I really wanted to do. And there wasn't much of a transition time, to be honest with you. I mean, undergrad, I didn't have to study too hard. I mean, there were some things that were challenging, like the math stuff, like physics and all that kind of shit. But as far as PT school went, it didn't get challenging unless there was we had like a stats course, a research methods course. Of course we did, right? Some of the biomechanics, like physics stuff, like that's always a little challenging. But for the most part, it wasn't terrible. So it was. I had some really great professors. One of the professors I'm still pretty cool with. His name's Dr. Maury Kolber, and I was able to intern at his PT practice that he was kind of running in Boca for I think it was like a 3-month program at the end of my the whole schooling. So I learned a lot. I had great professors. I had a lot of great classmates too. So it made the program really easy, really fun.
Okay, now we've all got difficult times in life. So was there anything during those college years? Obviously, you talked about being short and fat when you were younger, but during those college years, did anything come up that was a challenge for you, a struggle for you, something that you kind of had to push through, overcome? If so, if you don't mind, just maybe touch on that.
Honestly, like I'm pretty fortunate. I really didn't. I went to undergrad. I went to Miami University. My brother, he's a year older than me, year and a half older. I mean, we both went to school there. And so I look up to him a lot. I've always done that. And he was kind of there. He was kind of there to protect me, kind of look out for me too. And so I really didn't have. There wasn't a whole lot, in that time that was really challenging or much adversity. In PT school, though, and I think it was my cardiopulmonary class. I didn't do very well in one of the practicals, and my teacher, she's kind of a bitch. She failed me over something dumb. So I had to remediate a course in cardiopulmonary for the practical. That was pretty challenging. We got over that real quick. But then shortly after PT school, one of the things that was the hardest for me was a torn ACL. So that was one of the hardest things I ever had to deal with. So I tore my right ACL, I believe it was about 6 years ago. And then the surgeon didn't drill the holes right. So 8 months later, I had to have it done again. So that's probably one of the hardest things I've been through in my physical career. And then in the PT school, that course was in my educational career.
Yeah.
That was tough.
How did you tear the ACL?
So when I moved to Florida, one of the girls in my PT program, she was really big into CrossFit. She made it to CrossFit Games and all that stuff, and she was really good at Olympic lifting. So she kind of sucked me into that route. So I competed in a couple of bodybuilding shows at a lightweight back in college. And when I moved to Florida, I was like, well, do I want to pursue bodybuilding? And then she kind of pulled me in that direction. And I was getting pretty good at it. Made it to regionals. I was competing against some of the best in the world. And I was Olympic lifting, and my knee hyperextended when I reset to do a clean and jerk. So it was for me at the time, it was kind of lightweight. I was cleaning, doing doubles at 315, and I cleaned it. And when I went to reset the jerk, my knee was a little too locked out. I was tired. And when I caught it, my knee kind of went backwards. So I hyperextended it, snap. So yeah, that was a shit show. That was not fun. That was not fun. That was a long recovery.
Yeah. So since we're there, we'll just kind of keep going in this direction. But with the ACL tear, and then you obviously being a doctor of physical therapy, I mean, through that whole process, I mean, was it obviously it was difficult, but knowing all that you knew, did it make it easier, or did it make it more difficult in terms of the rehab process?
A little bit of both. So, it's really hard to be objective with yourself. So I was really fortunate enough to have some really good friends in the PT world. One of my good buddies, Joe Bernruder, he's down in kind of Fort Lauderdale, Davie area, where I was at the time. I was living down there, and he helped kind of rehab me. So I'd go in and see him, once or twice a week, and then he'd give me all the stuff to work on. And he's a great guy, great sports PT down there. So I was really lucky to have him around and just have someone to talk to and help me. And so, because you think it's torn, retorn, it's something weird. When a lot of my clients, a lot of my patients say that, I think it's retorn, but it's not. you have just kind of, you kind of just like, psych yourself out a little bit. And so having his help and, even though you know a lot, it's just a little challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Was that a huge mental challenge for you, Jeff? I mean, being, out of college and, very athletic and things like that, and probably a lot of positive things happening in your life. I mean, was that mentally really, really tough?
Oh, probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with to date. I mean, going from being the short, fat kid, never wanting to go back to that. And then you have this huge setback. Oh, I can't train legs. Like, you can't exercise. You're miserable. I mean, I still work my upper body as much as I could too. But, it took me down a pretty bad spiral. I was a little depressed. I went to see a therapist about it because like, it just, my whole world was shattered, and that was probably the best decision I could ever made, was seeing a therapist and talking about all that shit, because keeping that bottled up was really hard for me. And so, I mean, yeah, to date, probably one of the hardest things we've had to deal with. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a step back. Let's start talking a little bit about bodybuilding. You mentioned, well, first of all, I want to ask you, Jeff, like, there's a difference, obviously, as you know, there's a difference between training as an athlete and training as a bodybuilder. I mean, it's two completely different things. Obviously, there'll be some overlap in terms of maybe movements and things like that. But hypertrophy training is completely different than training for football and sports, generally speaking. So when did you kind of transition into more bodybuilding training? And then what was the initial attraction for you to actually get into bodybuilding and then step on a bodybuilding stage and compete? Because there's a lot that goes into stepping on stage, as we know. So unpack that story for us.
So when I was in college, one of the local guys in Perrysburg in the Toledo area, his name was Barry Gordon, and I would stumble into his Total Nutrition shop and we'd chat. And he was a natural pro, great physique, and he kind of took me under his wing and helped me out. And so I really wanted to compete, wanted to do it. He motivated me to get on stage and do it. And so that was back in 2000, I believe 8 and 9. I competed for the first time at like a lightweight. So I was a little nugget, competed at the Natural Ohio and the Natural Northern. And so I kind of got into that and loved it. It was super cool. Even though I was in college, I still competed. I got a little shit about it, like, oh, you're dieting, you're not drinking, but it was fun, so that's kind of like, I just really wanted to do it. I love just, all the pros back in that day, the aesthetics, between Jay and Ronnie and Dorian, all those guys. I was like, this is cool. And so I wanted to see what I could do too. And then after I, through PT, once I was done with PT school and then I was working, had the ACL injury. It was about 3.5 years ago. I wasn't sure like if I really still wanted to do the CrossFit stuff and all that, and the powerlifting, the Olympic lifting. Even though I was good at it, the knee, I'm getting older, like, what should I do? So, excuse me. So I actually met my fiance in January of 2019, and she's competed in bikinis and national shows. She's gotten top 5 at nationals. She's really impressive. On our first date, she told me I was going to do another show. And this is before, I even knew I wanted to get back into it. And she sucked me into it. And we did a couple shows that year. I got 12th at nationals that year in classic. And that's kind of just set off the whole career again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay. So you did a couple shows in college. Now, in terms of before you kind of got into the CrossFit stuff, your bodybuilding training, did this gentleman, this natural pro at the nutrition shop, did he kind of help you in terms of bodybuilding training as well? And if so, what did that kind of training look like back then when you first started bodybuilding?
It was a lot of volume, it was 3 or 4 sets, a lot of volume. And he kind of guided me in that direction. And so I'll do some training sessions with him. Even when I was done like playing football, I still did kind of a little more of the volume training, things like that. 3 or 4 sets, hit a bunch of body, pretty much a bro split, like I do now. So it's kind of how he structured it too. And so he kind of really helped me with the posing too, which obviously is one of the hardest parts of bodybuilding without question. So I would work out with him sometimes, a couple times a week here and there when I was home. And that's kind of how he helped me get to where I needed to be.
Okay. So now we're gonna get more into your current coach, Matt Jansen, but staying on the topic of training so that we can kind of finish up that. Obviously most people watching, listening to this know Matt Jansen has a pretty specific way that he likes most of his athletes, clients to train. Is that kind of the philosophy of training that you have adopted, kind of Matt's philosophy? And then expound a little bit more on kind of like maybe what your current training split is for us, just because most people kind of like to know that stuff.
Yeah. So when I met Matt 2 years ago, I linked up with him about 2 years ago. I really wanted to work with him, and he was nice enough to take me on as a client, and he kind of completely changed everything about my training. I was still doing a lot of the volume stuff, which worked in the past. But he's, really good, really big on, his feeder sets into his top sets, some rest pause and all that stuff. And I can't tell you how much I've grown and just changed over the last 2 years. Like, I never thought I'd be, even though I'm a pretty small guy still, never thought I'd be to where I am today, with he restructured everything. And, being able to see how he's trained people, seeing how Brett Wilkin trains, how, Matt had Nick Walker train, being able to see that firsthand, it really kind of changed my perspective on training, and also how to be like the intensity that it needed to be.
Yeah. What's your current training split?
So Matt has me doing back twice a week, and then I have chest and tries, shoulders and buys, and then legs once a week too.
Okay.
So back twice a week. You want to bring my back up, and we've definitely done that in the last year or so.
Is the double back days, is that like one's for more thickness, the other one's for width?
Yep. And then I do some rack pulls on those days too.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right. Now I want to take a step back. I want to talk a little bit more about you getting into CrossFit, because this is a unique experience that you have that I don't know if we've really talked about it a whole lot on the podcast, but also you being a physical therapist. And I'm curious to kind of see your perspective on this and hear a little bit more, because I have people, at the gym that I own ask me like, well, what do you think about CrossFit, Quentin? And I've dabbled in it myself, just because, I mean, let's be real. Like, when you see those top CrossFit athletes, I mean, a lot of them are jacked. The things that they're doing are awesome. I mean,
crazy.
It's super cool.
Fun
They're strong. It's very respectable. Okay. Like, if you're an athlete, like us, there's some sort of draw and appeal, I think, to most athletes in terms of CrossFit. But I have my own perspective and my own opinion. So I'm curious, first of all, going from kind of competing in bodybuilding, then into CrossFit, kind of like, did you really enjoy it? It sounds like you got pretty good competing at regionals and stuff. So talk about that a little bit. But then I also, from your doctor perspective, from being a physical therapist, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Jeff, what do you think about CrossFit? I would like you to share with us what you would say to somebody that asks you that question. So just talk a little bit more about your experiences in CrossFit personally, and then what is your perspective as a whole in terms of CrossFit?
I love the camaraderie of it. It's fun. It's quick. You get to, you feel like you're going to die during it. It's fun to push yourself past those limits, just like we do in bodybuilding. We push ourselves past those limits. We think we can. I loved it. And I met some of I still have great friends of, I've been in Florida for 11 years. I have some friends that I still have after all this time through CrossFit. And so that's kind of one of the things that's really nice about it. If we go to the gym, you don't have to be like the gym I go to around here, it's not Revive, but, I only know a couple people. We're not, buddies, we're not close. But in CrossFit, you're doing the same workout, you get to work out together, you suffer together. So that's pretty cool. I do think CrossFit is a young person's sport. I don't think it's not the best thing for your joints, obviously, either. That repetitive motion is going to destroy the body over time. The big problem is you have people coaching it who don't know what they're doing. You can take like a weekend level course, and people don't. And how can you keep an eye on 20 people in a class? When you're doing snatches or clean and jerks or whatever, out deadlifts even for that matter. It can give people with no fitness background coming in, who's coaching it and also doing it. It's a little challenging. Plus, there's no accessory work. You're not working. You rotate. You don't have time in the class to work rotator cuff, mobility, all these little things. So as long as those things are put in, it can be safer. But I think it's a little hard on the body. Really hard on the body at times.
Yeah. All right. So getting back into bodybuilding, you said. Is it your current girlfriend or fiance or?
Yep. Fiance.
Okay.
Yep.
So your current partner, she kind of got you back into bodybuilding. So why don't you talk a little bit about getting back into bodybuilding, did you have any hestation? And then talk about some of the competitions that you've done up to this point.
I had some hesitations, of course. I knew what it took before. I was in college, and I was like, man, do I really want to go through this again? But having such a great partner, I'm really lucky. She's so knowledgeable. She's a personal trainer. She does a lot of work with like diet plans, nutrition, and she does some really cool stuff. And she really educated me, like, why are you under eating? I'm like, I'm under eating? Like, no, I'm not. She's like, yeah, you are. Like, we were eating like the same. And I was like, oh shit. So she kind of got me on track, with cleaning up my diet, eating the right stuff. And then, because our relationship was going so well, I think it was like 2 months in, I hired a coach at the time. And our first show we did in 2019, we did Southern States. And so I competed in middleweights in classic at Southern States, won both of those divisions at Southern States. Good show. Went on to do USA's 2 weeks later, and I got killed. I got my ass kicked, last place. And so I was like, oh shit, this is what it takes. Okay, first national show of my life. I was like, all right, humbling experience. And then a couple, right after that, got back, like a week off after that. And then we dialed it in for nationals that year. So I did classic that year, and I got 12th that year. Okay. That was, November, back when it was in Brickell in 2019 in November. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you won Southern States, and then you competed at USA's. Yeah. What do you feel like was the biggest difference in terms of, your physique and some of the maybe first call out physiques in terms of classic physique at the USA's that year?
I mean, conditioning, size, density. I mean, all the above. I was so depleted, and it was pretty hard. It's pretty hard to get there, to get lean enough and everything like that. But I was just burnt out, and I looked like shit compared to those guys, and I knew it. I knew that these guys were way better. They've been doing it longer, and that's okay. I knew I wasn't going into it thinking, oh, I'm gonna do well. I wanted to get that experience. I wanted to see how it went, and very humbling experience, but a great one too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did Matt coach you in 2019, or was that pre-Matt?
That was pre-Matt. I linked up with Matt the end of 2020.
Okay. So, and you don't have to name any names, but you had a coach for the 2019 prep. How, I mean, the overall experience with that coach, I mean, kind of getting you back into bodybuilding. I mean, was it an overall good experience? What were some of your takeaways from that prep with that specific coach?
It was a great experience. He communicated to me well. He gave me the outline of a plan. He would meet me at one of the gyms nearby, help me with posing too, to see me in person and things like that. So he was available. He was really helpful. Great coach at the time. And I mean, he got me in the best shape I've ever been in my life. So I can't complain about that. So he was a great coach. One of my friends who's a fellow figure pro, she kind of linked me up with him, and it worked out. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. So talk about getting connected with Matt. How did you link up with him, and then talk about just kind of your guys' game plan from basically day one up to what you're 10 weeks out from this year.
So in the beginning of 2020, I ran into Dom, who owns Revive. So I ran into him at one of the Revive grand openings, kind of near our house here in Palm Beach Gardens. I didn't know who he was at the time. My fiance did. And, she's like, you should talk to him, like, tell him what you do, get to, meet him, introduce yourself. So we started shooting the shit. This is like right before COVID, and we're shooting the shit. And he's like, oh, I might have a need for a PT at some point. So he reached out to me in like June, and that kind of just set off this chain reaction of great things for me. And so, he said, hey, would you want to come up to Revive, on Saturday? Let's talk some numbers and things like that. So in August of 2020, I started going up to Revive. I have an office in there now. And so shortly after that, I was going up there on Saturdays. Shortly after that, Nick Walker just turned pro, and Matt Jansen and Nick moved down to Florida. So, I was introduced to those guys, and I was like, holy shit, this is Nick Walker, this is Matt Jansen. Like, these people are awesome, So I was able to kind of link up with them. I took great care of Nick, for that entire time he was at Revive, as well as Matt. Matt's had a couple injuries too. So that's kind of how it all started. I had a different coach in 2020 at the time, and I wasn't really happy with my coach, kind of how he was doing things. And I kind of expressed that to Matt, and Matt was, really professional about it. Like, hey, like, you're in prep, don't, you're competing soon. just like see how you feel when you're done and let's talk about it. Like don't make any decisions while you're in prep. I'll be happy to help you out with whatever you need. Let's talk about it later. So after I competed in 2020, didn't do well. That's when I was like, asked Matt, like, would you be willing to take me on as a client? And he's like, hell yeah. So it's kind of like how that all started.
Okay. Now, after 2019, you just said that you were in prep. It sounds like in 2020, did you compete then in some competitions?
Yep.
Pre-Matt, talk about those then.
So I just did Universe, and it was in South Carolina. It was in Charleston at the time. And once again, like I just didn't come in right. I think it was really hard to make weight. Like I was killing myself to make weight. And just didn't come in, didn't look good, and trying to cut all the weight too was really challenging to make. I was doing, I think I did classic that time too, and just trying to make the 176 cap for that or 175 cap for that was impossible. And so just trying to have to suck down so much, and I looked like shit. And so after that, I was like, went back to the drawing board. That year in 2020, my fiance, she got 6th at Universe and then 5th at Nationals that year. And so I was there to support her too. And but after that, I went to Matt and I was like, what should we do? And he's like, Jeff, I'm sorry, buddy, you're not classic. And so he's like, we got to get you to grow. And so I was like, all right, let's make it happen. So that's kind of the process that we've been doing. Okay.
So you took all of 2021 off then?
I did do the NPC Florida State show kind of as a qualifier. So I jumped into that, won the light heavies in that, and then take the rest of the year off. And then we've been kind of in the off season for a while, trying to grow. And then hopefully, I might do another regional show here in November just for fun, just to kind of get back on stage and comfortable. And then if Matt says we're ready, we'll jump on the national stage again this year.
Okay. So your plan as of right now is nationals in December.
Yes, sir.
You're going to be competing in the light heavy division. Is that correct?
Yep. Light heavies. Yep.
Okay. So what is, I don't want Matt's goal for you. What is your goal, Jeff, for yourself at nationals this year, going from classic physique to open men's bodybuilding, or open men's.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to look the best I can. If I can improve, the best placing at a national show is for me is 12. So if I improve upon that, that makes me happy. Obviously everyone's trying to win. It depends on who shows up. But if I just look the best I have, that's going to be great. I mean, being top 5 at nationals would be, amazing. But if I look better than I ever have, I can come in more condition than I have in the past. Like that's really what I'm looking to do. And so we'll see kind of how much of this hard work's paid off, last couple of years, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Do you have any long-term competitive bodybuilding goals? If so, what are those?
I mean, all of us want to turn pro, so that would be the goal long-term. We'll see. I'm 30, I'll be 34 this year. So I could, I'll be a master's person pretty soon before we know it. But, if we can turn pro, great. It's not going to make me money. I have a great career, but just being a part of it and being able to work with a lot of these guys is super cool for me. So that's kind of, I love the grind. I love prepping, I just love the challenge. So that's something that I just enjoy quite a bit.
Well, with Matt Jansen in your corner, we know that conditioning is obviously not going to be an issue. So I'm quite confident that you'll show up the best you've ever been, at nationals this year. Now, I'm assuming that being a competitive bodybuilder yourself, now we're going to kind of transition to finish up our conversation into kind of like your professional career as a physical therapist. But I'm assuming that being a competitive bodybuilder and having dreams to be an IFBB pro, there's got to be some sort of benefit of that in terms of working on bodybuilders who are pursuing their dreams, whether that's NPC or IFBB. Talk about how you being a competitive bodybuilder kind of helps you to relate with the athletes and even some of the coaches like Matt that you work on in terms of helping them with their health and longevity.
Well, what's nice too, I know all the poses, I know what the muscles should look like too. So a lot of these times, like when Chris reached out to me last year, I think in August, as he was in prep for Olympia, when he moved down to Florida, I just take a look at their body, see what we look like, how's training, and then I basically have them hit some of their poses, and we can kind of see like, is this lat locked up? Are you having a hard time contracting this? Like, why can't we see your hamstrings? And so depending on kind of what we find, and they know too, because I compete, I know what I'm looking for. I'm not just saying, oh, hit this pose and let for bullshit. Like they know I'm really specific in detail of what I'm trying to analyze and seeing how their movement patterns are. And even sometimes too, I'll take a look at like when they're doing poses, even if they post them, I can kind of break down, where they're stuck, if there's an issue here and there. And so we want to obviously prevent injury, when they're training hard, especially during prep, but also make sure that they can look the best on stage. Because if they can't flex something or contract something right, that's a big problem.
Have you found that these athletes are just maybe a little bit more comfortable or trusting with you because you are an athlete and you do get the bodybuilding game?
Oh yeah. I mean, the same reason why we don't hire a fat personal trainer or, someone who competes in your sport. I wouldn't want to advise somebody on how to play golf because I don't play golf, right? Or someone who does jujitsu, it's kind of out of my scope of practice, like the specifics of those things. So I'm not going to like try to preach those things, but because I do compete, I know what I'm looking for. I feel like they put a lot of trust in my hands to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about kind of working at Revive and stuff. So once you got out of college, you got your doctorate degree in physical therapy. What did your job / career kind of look like from the beginning? Yep. And then I know you mentioned you got connected with Dom and that kind of opened up a lot of doors, but take us back to the beginning, because most of us, when we graduate from college, we're not stepping into, working at Revive and working on Olympia champions. Yeah. Same with yourself. So take us from the beginning and then up to that point of working with Revive.
So right out of school, I started working for an orthopedic surgeon. And so pretty big practice. We saw, a lot of ACLs, meniscus, shoulder surgeries, a lot of that stuff. So learned quite a bit, it was a big practice, learned a lot. And I was there for about 2 years. And then I had a couple like small jobs in between, didn't kind of trying to find the right fit. And then more recently, I worked in Boca for about 4 years. I worked with like a big sports medicine outpatient orthopedic practice. It was owned by a great PT, awesome guy. Learned a ton from him and a lot of the staff. And so it was a big facility too. So I saw a lot of the athletes, saw a ton of knees, a ton of shoulders. So that's kind of what kind of drove me into that. It was really fun because I was able to drive into that sports field a little more. And then pretty much I took a job up here in kind of Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens area because I wasn't really enjoying like the job in Boca as much. But then also I moved in with my fiance at the time. And so driving, 45 minutes to work was kind of silly. So found a job locally. On paper, it seemed great, but it was terrible. So I was there about 1.5 years. And, thanks to my fiance and my in-laws, they gave me a lot of support to stop working there and then transition to open up my own practice, which I did the end of 2020. Okay. And I remember when I told Dom that I'm doing my own thing, he said to me, how fucking great does it feel? And I was like, it's the best thing ever. Nothing better than owning your practice, doing things the right way. And so I do give my fiance a lot of credit. She really was, supported me. I wasn't sure like, how can I help contribute, pay the bills, all this stuff. And, without her support, I don't know if this would have been done. Cause like, I don't know shit about business at the time. I knew all about the PT, but like, the business aspect and, opening and starting all that was confusing and challenging. But she's pretty sharp entrepreneur of herself and she got me on track. So that's been really helpful.
I'm assuming then during your education, there wasn't a whole lot of, business guidance then, because I know for myself, I took business classes and I'm a couple classes away from like a business management minor, but that was just kind of on my own accord. Cause I from the get-go knew that I wanted to own my own gym, which, those business classes, they don't mean anything right now. But my point being, was there any type of business guidance for you during all of that education or not really?
We had like one course in PT school and the professor that ran it like failed a business like 5 times. So he wasn't the most like, it seemed knowledgeable. I mean, on the topic too, but it was such like a basic thing. It didn't really help you get started. And it was a quick course. And so I don't feel like it was really helpful by any stretch of the imagination. I don't remember anything from that course. So yeah.
Okay. So then, talk about the entrepreneurship side, because I know there's other physical therapists out there that maybe are stuck, or maybe they feel like they're stuck kind of in like what they're supposed to be doing as a physical therapist, in some practice, doing the knees, rehabbing older people, but all that type of stuff. But they know there's more. And I know there's more because I own my own business, and it's like one of the most freeing things ever. And you just kind of touched on that. But so somebody has a doctorate degree, they feel like they're stuck. They know there's more. Obviously you had some great people around you, but how does somebody kind of go from, the security of, being in somebody else's practice to stepping out and opening up their own business? Like, what are some practical steps that you've learned that you can kind of share with all of us, so that maybe somebody can glean from you and move in that direction if they want?
Well, number one is, I would say, to meet everybody you can, make all these connections. That's one of the things that I've learned. I was able to network with a lot of the local personal trainers, because if they have injured clients, they're losing business too. So if they send their client to me, and I do most of the manual therapy that they need. And then I'll tell the trainer, hey, work on this with them. So everyone's happy. The client gets better, I'm getting taken care of, they're getting taken care of, the trainers getting taken care of, everyone's happy, right? I mean, the number one thing is making all these connections. And I've met such great people in this area. So the word of mouth and the connections I've made is huge. But I also was fortunate enough to have one of my buddies in PT school. He has his own practice in Charlotte. And I did some calls with him, and he really kind of guided me on, specifically like what I need to do in order to like legally open the practice and what to do. And so having someone in your corner who's done it, who has a cash-based practice of their own, that was so helpful, just to get me going.
Okay. So you just said cash-based. So everybody that comes to see you, they just pay you cash. There's no insurance or anything like that. Is that what I heard?
Yep, correct. So
okay, now I want you to talk about that, because I dated a girl that's a physical therapist. She has her own business, and that's how and I think she's probably still connected, but she hired like a business coach, and she told me it's like the best decision that she's ever made, and she's all cash based. And I know that was like a huge step for her in the growth of her business. So what does that mean in terms of like a chiropractor, physical therapist, and why is that maybe a benefit as opposed to what most people know is, taking people's insurance? And I know that's a long process. So touch on that, Jeff.
Well, the nice thing about having a cash-based practice is I don't have to deal with insurance. Insurance doesn't limit what we do. A lot of times if I'm not going to tell Chris Bumstead or Nick Walker or Brett Wilkin, hey, this is what you should do. We need to do these little exercises when you're with me. They want to come to me and do the manual therapy. They want to come for the needling, the Graston, the manipulation, we crack things. They want to come to me for that. So, insurance companies won't let you do just that. They won't reimburse you if you're doing all the manual therapy. They want you to do all this exercise. And they also want you to see, 2 or 3 people at a time. And so, the quality of care just goes to absolute shit. And that's something that I pride myself on, with my practice, is I want people to get better. I guarantee my work. If someone buys a pack of sessions with me, if they're not getting better, we don't see any improvement, I'll give you your money back, because that's a priority to me, making sure that they get better. And a lot of times people didn't get better in traditional PT. It's such low level. You can't really help them. You just have to point, go do that over there, and they don't really get better. So even though they're spending more money, they're probably saving more. They are saving more in the long run, better quality of care, better guidance, and better access for me to help them.
All right. So getting connected with Dom, having an office at Revive, obviously, I'm sure that has taken your business to a whole nother level. Why don't you talk about the relationship with Dom, the opportunities that you've had at Revive, and just talk about the evolution a little bit of your business since connecting with Dom.
I mean, because of Dom, it really took off, I think, too. I mean, I had a lot of the connections down here in Jupiter, but being able to link up with Dom and then being able to be at Revive, I just got a lot of exposure. A lot of the trainers at Revive are excellent, and they really send me a lot of clients too, which is really helpful because I'm right there. And then if clients have questions, they can just ask me too. But once Dom let me into gave me an opportunity to do this, I was able to help out Nick and Matt and all these guys and Dom and everybody. So being there really opened up all these doors, and then just being able to have them repost that I'm there, and having someone like Chris Bumstead, Brett Wilkin, Nick Walker, all these guys endorse me, say, hey, like, he knows what he's doing, come see him. That really just took off for me.
Okay, so what is it like for you? Obviously, seeing, let's just say Chris, use C-Bum as an example, because everybody that I've had on here, like Matt Berzicott and people like that are around him, obviously they have nothing but gracious words to say, and what we see on YouTube is they say what you get in real life. So, being able to see some of these guys, like you said, Matt Jansen walking in, Nick Walker, see him on Instagram, you kind of look up to those type of people, especially when you're in bodybuilding. In the beginning, was it a little, and I know that you were probably around a lot of professional football players and athletes in the past, but was it a little like, I don't want to say you were starstruck, but was it a little surreal kind of in the beginning, having these opportunities to work on these type of athletes at Revive? Touch on that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it was just pretty bizarre, as I'm kind of just jumping back into the bodybuilding world, and you see these people kind of like blowing up. I remember when we did USA's in 2019, I remember seeing Nick on stage. I remember seeing him, and I kind of like said something to him, very, whatever. But, you're like, holy shit, like, I get to work with these guys. This is super cool. And, even more so when Chris reached out to me, I believe it was August of 2020, I was just like, holy shit, like, August of 21, getting a DM from Chris Bumstead, asking him to get some work done. You're like, holy shit. Yeah. So that was super cool. And all these guys are super appreciative and super grateful for me to help them out, and Chris is exactly what people say. That's why everyone loves the guy, because he's such a nice person. He goes out of his way to help people. And so he's always taking good care of me, and, he's been just a great guy. So it's pretty awesome.
How do you use social media, specifically Instagram? Obviously, you said other people are posting kind of how great you are or recommending you through their social media. So obviously that's great. But for you, do you utilize Instagram to kind of promote or to get information out there? Like, how do you kind of use Instagram as a business tool for yourself personally? Maybe you did it more so in the beginning of your business than now, but talk about that, because again, social media can be a great tool for entrepreneurs and business owners. You just kind of have to know how to use it for your specific business. So touch on that, Jeff.
I would say like a bigger chunk of my patient population uses Instagram. And so by being able to post, whether my schedule, what kind of treatments I'm doing, and people repost those things, that's been really helpful. People can reach out to me on there. I'm not too many people use Facebook anymore. Like, at least unless it's like the older generation. But a lot of these people, they get my cell phone, they text me, they call me. Some people go to our website and email me. They can do that too. But, using the social media, like, it's nice for people to see like what I do. And then because I had like a pretty sized following to start, they can see like, what do I do in my personal life and also the business side of things. So I want people to like know who I am, and, they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back to something. We're going to wrap it up here shortly, but you mentioned kind of like, PTs getting, connecting with people, kind of meeting as many people as you can and building these relationships, specifically with personal trainers. They would send their clients to you. You kind of send them back to them. You'd have this communication with the personal trainer, say, hey, have your client do this. Now, in terms of, and this is actually a question I'm asking for myself, because I have big business aspirations, and I want to work with chiropractors. I want to work with physical therapists along with like the personal training. So this is kind of a question more for myself, but I'm sure somebody else will glean from it. But so how do you, like, in terms of you getting paid, because at the end of the day, we can do certain things for certain people and not get paid, but at the end of the day, we have bills to pay. It's about getting paid, right? Yeah. So practically speaking, Jeff, how have you set up working with like specifically personal trainers, them referring to you sending their clients back to them? What does that look like in terms of you getting compensated, them getting compensated, and kind of keeping everybody happy? How have you found maybe the best route for that?
Usually a lot of people that have a trainer usually have typical aches and pains. I currently, like one example, I probably say most recently, one of the trainers at Revive, one of her clients, I think she's in her like late 50s. She had early 60s, had a knee replacement, and so she's super fit, super healthy, had knee replacement, right? So she's, I think I think she had it in June. So she's doing really well, but she's still limited in some things. So, even though she's working with her trainer, like, hey, Jeff, like, what are we missing here? So she's missing a lot of the, the body work, hands-on, the dry needling, the soft tissue, and then just getting like the muscle activated, and maybe there's a couple little exercises we're missing. So, she'll come see me. Perfect example is I'm seeing her tomorrow. So I'm seeing her at Revive tomorrow. So she works out with her trainer at 9, or she'll work out I'll either see her at 8 o'clock or I'll see her at 10 o'clock. And so I'll see her before or after. And so if she's all warmed up, it's like, okay, let's do some body work. Let's work on a couple little things in mobility. And so, you can easily see the trainer or me first. And then whatever I find in the treatment, I can just walk out, hey, this is what we found. This is what we need to work on. She's still limited here. We're not activating this as much. We're missing a little bit of, let's say knee extension, and we got to work on just a little bit of those things.
So how does the compensation work then between those relationships?
So usually I discount, clients that buy like a package of sessions. So like this client bought like a package of 6. So, she pays me for, the sessions we do once a week. And then, she still sees her trainer and pays her trainer separately. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the session kind of package thing is very similar to what like a lot of personal trainers then do, right? Like the packages.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is that kind of how you have things set up for most of your clients? Is like you have them buy packages?
Yeah. And usually too, some of them, I might see once a week, once a month. It just depends on their need. A lot of people that don't have pain, the most important time to get your body worked on is when you're feeling good. We got to getting the body work done. The regular body work is so important. One of the most dedicated clients I've ever had would be Justin Jacoby. I know we touched on him a little bit ago, but Justin saw me every single week for like 4 months up to nationals. He did his qualifier, then did nationals, and him and Amdine, I still see both of them, regularly now every week. Even though they feel good, we still work on all these things just to keep the body healthy.
Okay. All right. So speaking to bodybuilders, specifically bodybuilding clients that you see, are there some, okay, let's say you have a bodybuilder reach out to you, say, hey, Jeff, I'm going to buy some, a package from you. I want to get some sessions. Here's kind of what I'm dealing with. Are there a couple things that usually when a bodybuilder is going to reach out to you, even when they reach out to you, maybe it's not what they bring up, but once you start working on their body, that probably this or that is going to be something that during this time that you're probably going to need to address with them. If so, what are some of those common things with bodybuilders that you have to address?
Mobility.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, so think about, when you're on a bodybuilding stage, the judges are kind of below you, right? So a lot of these guys, they get so big that they lose, one thing is external rotation. So they can't externally rotate their shoulder, or they might lose shoulder extension. So a couple things we definitely need to work on is just increasing that mobility, whether we're using, Graston, cupping, dry needling, manipulation, active release, all these different things, some contract, relax, just to get these shoulders and everything to move better. But typically, more often than not, it's that rotation or even the shoulder flexion. So a lot of these guys, they just get too big. They can't raise their arms up all the way. So we risk a lot of that injury too when we lose the mobility. But also, if your posing isn't on point, you lose a lot of that detail on stage.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, let's just say, shoulder mobility, what are some exercises that athletes out there listening, watching this can kind of incorporate into their normal routine to kind of maybe work on some of that? Specifically, let's just keep it short with shoulder mobility. What are some exercises, Jeff?
One of the things that I found to love, if you use like a big band, one of the guys I work with at Revive, he's one of the new pros, Vaughn Walker. He's really religious about it, and I know Brett Wilkin is too. If you use a band and you just kind of open up like pec stretch into like a bicep stretch or lat stretch. I mean, I have some of those on my Instagram page. I have some videos of those too. Those, even Vaughn's posted about them on his YouTube too about it. But, just stretching out the shoulders, making sure we're opening up the lats and the chest, just because a lot of these guys get so big, those muscles just get too short and you never go into these movements. So, making sure that we're opening up the chest enough and get the lats opened up. And that's one of the big things that these guys really need to work on, and especially keeping like the posterior shoulder open. Doing different stretches like a sleeper stretch and things like that are really important. And I think a bodybuilder's best friend should be a lacrosse ball. If you have a lacrosse ball, you can get in, get up against the wall or lay on it and really open up a lot of those back muscles that are just knotted up really tight too. So that'll definitely increase the mobility in the shoulder and the chest and everything else.
Okay, cool. I know on Chris's YouTube, I've seen him do the band stuff. I've seen him lifting with the band around his neck,
Yeah.
So he must have got that from you, huh?
That one he didn't. I don't know why he carries it around, but I've seen in some of his. I do watch all my clients' YouTubes, things like that. And so when I see Vaughn or I see Brett or I see Chris doing this stuff, I'm like a proud parent. I'm really happy about it. I'm like, you're doing your stuff. You listen, like good boy, So it makes me happy to see that they're doing their stuff and to see them healthy and kicking ass. I love it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Okay, so to wrap it up here. Like I'm a huge proponent of body work. I go get massage every week. I go to the chiropractor every week. I think it's essential if you're going to be a competitive bodybuilder. But some things that I quickly want to touch on, like dry needling, Graston, cupping, manipulation. Now I've gotten Graston done. I've got cupping done, dry needling. No. Now, in terms of manipulation, specifically, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So chiropractors call them adjustments. As a physical therapist, we call them manipulations, because like we don't have to dive into that rabbit hole of chiropractor versus PT. But so as a PT, we crack things for different reasons. Yeah. So I can crack different extremities, wrist, shoulder. I can do neck, feet, ankles, elbows, all that stuff. Okay. So there's a lot of variation to it. I don't utilize it as often as a chiropractor might, but I still do it pretty frequently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, all of these, the dry needling, the Graston, the cupping, are those classes that you took during your doctorate of physical therapy? Is this all stuff that you did post graduation of your doctorate degree?
You kind of learn it more of it post. I mean, you learn some of it in school from like when you're doing clinicals. So I learned a little bit of this stuff from there, but dry needling just became legal for PTs to do, I believe it was July of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So I had some friends that are certified in different states, and they said it's awesome. They said it's the coolest shit ever. They're like, Jeff, you work with bodybuilders, they're gonna love you. And so when I jumped on that, I mean, it's just been one of the coolest things I've ever done. That course for PTs, we need about 60 hours of coursework, and chiropractors only need, I think, like 25. So that's for Florida. But I mean, once I started doing it, I just saw like, during the courses we did, I did it 2 years ago. I fell in love, with the course and what needling did for me. Having the knee surgeries, and my knee was it's still a little beat up. What it was able to do for my knee, and then what it's been able to do for so many people. Like, I think it's just the coolest shit ever. Everyone should try it once. Like, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Now, cupping. I think Michael Phelps in one of his Olympics kind of made that popular here in the States.
Yeah, big time.
I know I saw Nick Walker at one point. He was getting it done very regularly. Talk about cupping, because I really think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of these things that we're talking about, people say they work. Some people are a little skeptical. I mean, it's kind of like whatever you kind of find works best for you. But from your personal perspective, in terms of cupping, what say you in terms of just how effective do you really think it is?
Well, I think in terms of effectiveness, I think dry needling is the most effective of any treatment you can do. You're going to get better depth in the tissue, and you cause more chemical changes in the body from that. When we're dealing with cupping, if you leave a cup on for a little longer, if you get a massage done, you get Graston done. Let's say I cover an area for 30 seconds, maybe with the cup, it can be on there for, let's say 5 to 8 minutes or so, which is really nice too. You also get this different type of pressure. When we're getting massage work with Graston, it's downward pressure. With cupping, it's upward pressure. And so you get just a different type of work on the tissue. And so I feel like, I do a little bit of both, so I'll Graston people over an area, but then we'll cup over it. And what you can also do with the cups on is you can do a little bit of dynamic cupping. With the cups on, you can move through an active range of motion. And so we kind of release the tissue a little bit more that way. So, I mean, I think some people like cupping, some people don't. More often than not, I feel like people really like it, because it's, you basically put the cup on and you get to sit there. or you get to move around with it. When you're getting deep tissue work done or grafting done in a spot that's kind of bothering you, it's gonna be a little painful. And so the cupping, you just kind of, it's in there, you're good. You just kind of hang out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. In terms of bodybuilders watching and listening to this, what I want you to kind of speak to them in terms of, because I have a lot of guys come on here and they'll do their body work maybe once a week or bi-weekly, like when they're in prep. But then a lot of them come on here and they'll tell me like, I don't really do it. I'm in off season. I should do more. I should do more stretching. I want a doctor of physical therapy that's working on, Mr. Olympias to kind of speak to everybody out there watching, listening to this in terms of how important it really is for somebody that's really trying to be an elite bodybuilder, whether that's in the NPC or IFBB, how important it really is for them to get, we'll just leave it at tissue work done on a regular basis. And I want you to tell all of us, Jeff, how regular should we be getting this tissue work done, whether that's off season or in prep?
I think everyone should be getting it. If you're really competitive and you want to be maximize your potential, I think once a week is excellent. You can get away with probably twice a week, maybe 2 or 3 weeks here and there. As long as even once a month, as long as you're doing all things to be proactive with, taking care of your body. So if you have a lacrosse ball, you have your foam rollers, you have all your bands, you're doing different types of mobilization and you're doing all these things, you can kind of get away with a little less frequent. Obviously the financial point would be a little struggling for some people, but overall, it's so important because you're going to maximize your time in the gym. If we can get more blood flow to the muscle, we can increase mobility. If you're working on a longer muscle and a bigger muscle, you can contract it harder. You're going to maximize your potential in the gym more, in theory, right? And so, especially in the off season, when you're really training really hard, you get a lot more stiff. Obviously, we lose, like when you try to pose in the off season, your mobility feels like trash. So it's even more of a reason why to get worked on. And so, like I mentioned, I'll touch on him again. Justin Jacoby, off season, he doesn't know when he's going to compete again. Probably next year, probably in 23 at some point. He sees me every single week. So for him, his priority is to stay healthy and maximize what he can do in the gym. So with that regular body work, you're going to be able to really put out so much more effort in the gym. And also you're reducing your risk of injury too, by just taking care of the tissue in the body. So I think it's so important. Like if you can afford it, you have someone good around you once a week is great. But, just taking the time, just like you do in prep, you got to treat an off season just as important as prep, working on the mobility, making sure we're doing stuff to increase our hip motion, shoulder motion, spinal mobility, like all these things are so valuable and you just got to take time for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So kind of the last question that I've got for you here, Jeff, we'll wrap it up. I asked you kind of what your long-term competitive bodybuilding goal is. I would like to ask you, what is your long-term business goal?
Well, right now, I really want to grow the practice. I want to continue to grow it. We're going to expand some stuff at Revive. My good buddy, Ryan Brown, is going to move here from Texas and kind of work with me over here. So, I've spoken to Dom about what we want to do at Revive and kind of grow that. And then we're going to continue to grow my practice down here in Jupiter too. I'm going to hire another PT, so long-term, I'd love to grow it. I don't want to be an owner that only works 5 or 10 hours, with clients. I prioritize working with people and I love it. And so, I want to be super involved with all my clients I work with. I want to be super involved in the bodybuilding world, just like I am now. But if I can grow the practice to help more people and get more awareness about it out there, just to take care of the body, because having a lot of injuries, we didn't touch on it, but I've had a lot of injuries in the past. And so if I can help people get access to this sooner to avoid those things from happening, that's really what I want to do.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Okay, Jeff. I just want to say thanks, man, for coming on and sharing kind of your bodybuilding story, your life story, your business story. It's really appreciated. Some very valuable info. Before I do a quick outro, please, if you have any final thoughts, any final words, please share those with us. Again, maybe give us your Instagram, website, any other things that you would like to leave us with. The platform's yours, and then I'll do a quick outro, and that'll be a wrap, man.
Well, if anyone's got any questions, my Instagram is just at j.hart, Hart. Just hit me up, shoot me a message. I'll be happy to take care of you. On there too is a link to my website. You can find me on there. Whatever questions you have, reach out. But get your body work done, train hard, and just keep working hard. Keep growing. Yeah.
And also I want to say good luck, man, at Nationals. That'll be exciting to see up there. Okay.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. You're welcome, Jeff. All of you who are tuning into this episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. I appreciate all of you. I value all of you. Per the usual, if it weren't for all of you, the podcast would not exist. A couple of quick things as we wrap up this great conversation today with Dr. Jeff Hart. Please take this episode, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Jeff, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. Also, if you guys have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to iTunes, Podbean, Castbox, and some of the other major podcast platforms. So if you are not a subscriber on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button or go over to YouTube and then hit that subscribe button. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.